There are times in life when you feel as though your prayers are falling on deaf ears. You pray, but the answers seem distant. Yet, in those quiet moments, God is often working in ways that we cannot immediately comprehend. Today, I want to share with you 4 signs that God is answering your silent prayers, even when you may not see it. These are not just abstract concepts, but profound truths that can strengthen your faith and help you recognize the divine working behind the scenes. First, have you ever noticed that peace begins to fill your heart, even in the midst of trouble? When you pray, the turmoil inside you may not immediately disappear, but there is a quiet assurance that God is in control. This peace isn't from the absence of problems, but from the presence of God's Spirit within you. It's like a divine comfort that transcends the situation you're facing. You see, peace is a sign that God is at work in your heart, reassuring you that He hears you even when the answer hasn't fully manifested. Second, the doors that seem permanently closed begin to open. God doesn't always answer your prayers in the way you expect, but His timing is always perfect. You may be praying for a breakthrough in a certain area of your life, and while it might seem impossible, God has a way of opening doors that no man can shut. When you see opportunities unfolding unexpectedly, even in areas where you had no hope, know that God is answering your silent prayers. This doesn't mean it's all going to happen immediately, but it's a clear sign that God is at work in your situation, even when you don't see it. Third, there's a subtle change in your circumstances. It may not be a dramatic turnaround, but slowly and surely things start to align in a way that reflects God's hand. Maybe you're beginning to see small victories in areas that seem stagnant. These shifts may not seem grand, but remember that God often works in the small details. He answers prayers not just with big miracles, but with consistent, steady steps that lead you to where you need to be. When you notice these subtle changes, recognize that they are part of the process of God answering your prayers. Finally, the people around you begin to change in ways that encourage your growth. One of the most profound ways that God answers our silent prayers is through the people He places in our lives. Sometimes we are praying for wisdom, for patience, or for a change in our relationships. And God, in His wisdom, works through people to bring about that change. You may find that certain people begin to speak into your life in ways that offer clarity, support, or even correction. This is God moving through others to fulfill His purpose in your life. When you begin to see people around you shift in alignment with what you've been praying for, understand that this is a sign of God's answer to your silent prayers. These 4 signs are not just coincidences, they are divine confirmations that God is hearing and answering your prayers in ways that you may not immediately understand. Keep your faith strong and your eyes open to how God works in your life. He is always at work, even in the silence, and He is answering your prayers in ways that will lead you toward your destiny. Peace is an internal assurance that God is in control, even in chaos. Closed doors begin to open unexpectedly, showing God's timing and power. Small, gradual changes in your life are a sign that God is at work. People around you shift in ways that support your growth and purpose. God's answers are not always immediate, but they are always perfect in timing. Prayer is not just about asking, it's about aligning yourself with God's will. The presence of peace is often a confirmation that God hears your silent prayers. Even in times of waiting, God is orchestrating events to answer your prayers. Recognize subtle shifts in circumstances as signs of God's ongoing work. God answers not just with miracles, but with gradual, consistent growth in your life. Peace is an internal assurance that God is in control, even in chaos. In life, there are moments when the storm seems unrelenting, and we find ourselves wondering if our prayers are even reaching God. It's in these moments of uncertainty and unrest that God gives us a peace that doesn't make sense by worldly standards. This peace is not the absence of trouble, but the presence of His Spirit within us, reassuring us that He is aware of our struggles and is actively working on our behalf. It's a peace that surpasses understanding, meaning that it's not tied to external circumstances, but rather to the deep, unshakable knowledge that God is present and He is faithful to His promises. When you experience this peace in the midst of your silent prayers, understand that it is a divine sign that God is not only listening, but He is already moving in your life. It may not always come in the form of an immediate solution to your problems, but it is a quiet yet powerful confirmation that God's presence is already at work, transforming your heart and your situation. This peace keeps you steady when everything else seems to be falling apart, guiding you to trust in God's timing and His perfect plan. Closed doors begin to open unexpectedly, showing God's timing and power. Life often presents us with circumstances that seem insurmountable, where it feels as though every door is locked, every opportunity is out of reach, and the way forward is obscured. In these moments, you may feel as though your prayers are unheard, but God is working behind the scenes in ways that are unseen. What may seem like a closed door today could be part of a divine strategy to move you into something better, something aligned with His greater purpose for your life. There are times when you'll find doors that were once firmly shut suddenly opening before you, often in the most unexpected ways. These open doors are not mere coincidences, but divine interventions that confirm God is at work. The answer to your silent prayers may not come in the form of a dramatic event, but rather as a series of events that bring new opportunities, new connections, and new directions that you had not considered before. God's timing is always perfect, and He knows when to unlock the doors that will lead you to the next chapter of your life. It is essential to stay alert, to trust in God's sovereignty, and to be ready to walk through the doors He opens, knowing that they are part of His answer to your prayers. When you witness this change, this sudden unfolding of opportunity, understand that it's not a random occurrence, but a tangible sign that God is answering your silent prayers in ways that are both profound and purposeful. Small, gradual changes in your life are a sign that God is at work. Often when we pray, we expect immediate, drastic changes in our circumstances. We want to see quick answers, dramatic breakthroughs, and clear, unmistakable signs of God's intervention. However, the way God works is often far more subtle than we anticipate. Sometimes His answers don't come all at once, but through a series of small, incremental changes that build upon one another over time. These changes might seem insignificant in the moment, but if you take the time to reflect, you'll begin to see how God is quietly shifting things in your life to align with His purpose. It could be as simple as a change in your mindset, a shift in your priorities, or the gradual improvement of a situation you've been praying about. These small steps are often overlooked, but they are just as important as the big miracles. When you notice that things are slowly but surely aligning, even in the smallest ways, it is a sign that God is answering your prayers, even if the final result has not yet fully manifested. It's easy to become discouraged when the results of your prayers aren't immediate, but it's essential to recognize these subtle shifts as evidence of God's ongoing work. He is orchestrating things in your life, piece by piece, preparing you for something greater. The steady, consistent progress you experience is a reminder that God is faithful, and His work, though sometimes quiet, is deeply effective in shaping your destiny. Even in times of waiting, God is orchestrating events to answer your prayers. We live in a world that craves instant results, where patience is often seen as a challenge rather than a virtue. When we pray, we want answers now. However, one of the most significant signs that God is answering your silent prayers is when you are in a season of waiting. Waiting doesn't mean that God is absent or indifferent to your needs. Rather, it means He is working in ways you cannot yet see. God is not bound by time, and His understanding of what is best for you is far deeper than our limited perspective. While we may feel like nothing is happening, God is preparing things behind the scenes. During periods of waiting, He is aligning people, circumstances, and opportunities in a way that will fulfill His purpose in your life. Waiting is not a passive state, it's a time of preparation. God is refining your character, strengthening your faith, and preparing you for the blessings that are on their way. The timing of God's answers is perfect, and while it may seem like a delay, it is actually part of His divine plan. It's in this waiting period that you learn to trust, to grow, and to deepen your relationship with God. Understand that even when things feel stagnant, God is still at work orchestrating events and positioning you for the fulfillment of your prayers in ways you may not immediately recognize. What may seem like a delay is actually divine preparation. And every moment of waiting brings you closer to the manifestation of His answers. Recognize subtle shifts in circumstances as signs of God's ongoing work. In life, we often look for dramatic, earth-shaking changes when we pray for transformation. But more often than not, God's answers come through the quiet, subtle shifts in the circumstances around us. These shifts may be so small that they're easily overlooked, but they are powerful indicators that God is at work. Perhaps you start to notice small improvements in your relationships, a slight change in the way people are responding to you, or even little victories in areas of your life that have felt stagnant. These are not coincidences, they are part of God's quiet work in your life. The subtlety of these changes does not make them any less significant. In fact, they are often a sign that God is preparing something much larger. When you see these shifts, you are being given a glimpse into the ongoing work that God is doing in response to your prayers. It's in these moments that you must have faith, recognizing that God's hand is moving even when you cannot immediately see the full picture. These small adjustments are often the building blocks for larger breakthroughs. Trust that God is orchestrating these changes to bring you closer to the answers you have been waiting for. He does not need to work in big, dramatic moments to produce great results. Sometimes the most powerful work is done through the smallest, most subtle shifts in the fabric of your life. God answers not just with miracles, but with gradual, consistent growth in your life. While we often expect God's answers to come in the form of dramatic, instantaneous miracles, many of His responses come through steady, incremental growth. This kind of growth isn't flashy or immediately visible, but it is profoundly transformative over time. It might be the development of a stronger character, a deeper sense of faith, or a greater level of wisdom. Often, God is more concerned with shaping you into the person He designed you to be rather than just fixing the external problems you're facing. When you find yourself growing in ways that you didn't anticipate, whether it's in your emotional resilience, your patience, or your ability to navigate challenges, know that God is answering your silent prayers. These gradual changes are a reflection of His work within you, and they often prepare you for the larger blessings that will come in due time. Growth doesn't always come in the form of immediate solutions. Sometimes the most significant answers are found in the slow, ongoing process of becoming more like the person God intends for you to be. This consistent, quiet growth is just as much a sign of God's faithfulness as any miracle, and it often has a far greater impact on your life in the long run. Trust that the growth you experience is a direct result of God answering your prayers, even if it's not always in the way you expect. The process of becoming is often the most powerful answer of all. In conclusion, we must understand that God's ways are not our ways, and His timing is not our timing. He works in the unseen, orchestrating events, shifting circumstances, and transforming hearts in ways that we often fail to recognize in the moment. The 4 signs we've discussed: peace that transcends understanding, doors that unexpectedly open, subtle shifts in your life, and the growth in the people around you are all confirmations that God is answering your silent prayers. God's answers are not always immediate or in the form we anticipate, but rest assured, He is always at work. Trust that His timing is perfect, His methods are intentional, and His plans for you are far greater than anything you could imagine. Even when you can't see the changes, even when it feels like your prayers are unheard, God is moving in the background, preparing you for the breakthrough ahead. So keep your faith steady, stay expectant, and watch carefully. As you continue to pray, remember that God's answers may be unfolding in ways that are small and quiet at first, but they are moving you toward your divine destiny. When the answer finally comes, you will recognize it not just as a result of your prayers, but as evidence of a faithful God who has been answering you all along in ways that only He could.